On making something called a Beuure Manie, which is quite a chefy thing to do. However, it's a really useful thing to have in the kitchen because it just means you've got an instant thickening paste method of thickening up gravy and soups and stews and that type of thing without having to with just having flour in the house. So it's basically like making a white sauce or a velouté. What we're going to do is we've got some fat and we've got some flour, equal quantities of fat, equal quantities of flour, and we're going to cook it out. And then we're going to, instead of then adding liquid to it, we're going to let it go cold. And then what that'll do is it'll give us like an instant gravy granule type of thing. So in here I've got 250 grams of beef fat, which I skimmed off something else, can't remember what it was from. And then to add that, we're going to add equal quantities of 250 grams of flour. Low heat, and then we're going to cook this for 20 minutes. What that'll do is it'll get rid of all the flour kind of flavour, and then we were left with a roux. Now then you could add liquid to that roux if you wanted, but the best thing to do is to let it go cold, keep it in a container, and then keep it in the fridge, and then you've always got something just to quickly make a white sauce, make a velouté, or thicken some soups and stews or gravies up instantaneously without having to cook out the flour. So if you had a gravy and you wanted to thicken it, you didn't have any gravy granules, what you'd have to start doing is mucking around. You couldn't just add flour to it to thicken it up. You'd start having to melt fat, add flour to it, cook it for 20 minutes, and then you could start thickening things up. Whereas this method, you can instantaneously thicken things up. So, relatively low temperature because you don't want it to burn, but you do want it to cook. I think we're going to add some more flour to that. Yeah, we'll add a bit more flour to that. So I reckon another 50 grams. Fat of choice, as always, so you can use oil, although I don't. It's about 50 grams. So fat of choice. I'm using beef, but you can use lard. You can use butter, but the thing with butter, you've got to remember that butter isn't a solid fat. It is fat and it's whey as well. So you've kind of got to compensate for that with the amount of flour that you put in. So I reckon 250 grams of fat, 300 grams of flour, and then just a slow cook out. Keep an eye on it. You don't want it to burn. You don't want it to colour too much. It will colour. You just need to keep moving it around. You don't have to watch it constantly. I'm now going to, it's quite hot to touch, so I know it's cooking. I'm going to go off and do other things. I'm going to check back on it every 5 or 6 minutes. Just keep an eye on it. Just make sure that everything's ticking over. Then that's fine. And then what we'll do is I'll pour it into a container, I'll let it go cold, and then I'm making a white sauce later on. So I will show you how to make a white sauce using Beuure Manie, which is this. So otherwise the video just kind of just doesn't mean anything. And certainly if you don't know too much about food, you'll just think I'm nuts, and you won't really know the applications of how to use it. So I'll show you how to use it in making a white sauce later on today, once this is cooled down and when I'm making the white sauce. But anyway, that's it for now. Hope that made sense. Hopefully it does. Should do. I don't know. We'll see. But I might move it onto a smaller gas burner as well. If it gets a little bit too warm, it has a tendency to fry, and you don't want the flour to burn, because that's kind of changes the flavour of things. But anyway, that's it for now. So that's bubbling too much after 5 minutes. So we need to put it on to the burner at the back on a lower heat. Like that. Just move the camera. If it had carried on cooking like that, it would have soon start to burn. So smaller burner at the back, lowest heat, the little go, and then just quick stir. And away we go. Flour that I'm using is what we call plain flour, which it's got no raising agents in it, so it's just straight flour. And not bread flour or pasta flour or anything like that, just a plain pastry flour that you'd use for pastry. There we go. I think that's it. Yeah, so that'll happily tick on for another 15 minutes, just to cook out the flour. I think we'll add a bit more flour. Bit more flour. what I'll do is I'll weigh it afterwards, and then we can get the kind of ratio of fat to flour, because nothing's going to evaporate. It's not going to lose any nothing's going to evaporate off it, because you can't evaporate fat, and there's nothing in the flour moisture wise. There we go, that's better. So we'll be able to tell, once I weigh that afterwards, we'll be able to tell how much fat that went in and how much flour, and I reckon it'll be about 250 grams of fat and 350 grams of flour, but that's a better consistency. You are supposed to use equal quantities of fat and flour, but I don't particularly agree with that. I've always found this method works slightly better. Anyway, that's it for now. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's happily tipping along. That'll be another 15-20 minutes. Well, 15 minutes, we're done. 20 minutes, and it's now ready. So it doesn't want to be bubbling any more than that, so I'm going to turn it off, let it cool slightly, and then I'm going to pour it into a, don't let it go cold, otherwise it sets solid. Well, you'll see when it's cold, but just let it cool slightly before I'm going to pour it into a container. You don't need to cool it if you're going to put it in an oven-proof, heat-proof container. It's just I'm going to put it in a plastic container that's got a lid, and then it can just sit in the cupboard. I also like things with lids because you can put other things on top of them and stack them. So, turned it off, let it cool down, just so it's not red hot, because it'll melt that plastic at that temperature. So, give it a stir, cool down 5-10 minutes, let it go cold-ish, but still pourable, then into that container and then in the fridge. And then we'll come back and we'll make the white sauce once it's all set. But it's dead easy. And once you've got it, it's just one of those really useful things to have like knocking around the house. But you'll see why. So, white sauce made with the Beuure Manie. The milk is hot. This is what you have to do it. You have to boil the milk first and then add the Beuure Manie. It doesn't really work the other way around. You can, and it's also going to be difficult to kind of judge how much Beuure Manie you need for the amount of milk. That's the other good thing about Beuure Manie. You can keep adding a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more until you get the consistency that you like. So, as you can see, it's been in the fridge and it's set up nice and solid. I haven't weighed it yet. Maybe should weigh it. I'll stop the video and I'll weigh it, and then won't cut, and then I can definitely work out what the ratios were. Hang on. Right, I have weighed it, and it weighs 600 grams. So that means there was 250 grams of fat and 350 grams of flour. That's a good ratio for a Beuure Manie. So milk's going to come up to temperature. I'm just going to use, I've got some old Beuure Manie which I want to use up first because stock rotation and all that kind of stuff. But you'll kind of see as the milk comes up to temperature, we can just drop some nuggets of the older Beuure Manie in, and then it'll start to thicken up almost instantaneously. The good way of doing it this way is you don't have to cook it out. So as soon as it's thick, it's ready to go. I really shouldn't have started doing the job at the same time. So do it this way. There is another way of doing Beuure Manie, which you mix raw flour and fat together and then add that into sauces and thicken it up that way. The only problem is that you then need to cook out that sauce for 20 minutes to get rid of the flavour of the flour, which is not kind of ideal. In my eyes, so I think it's much better to cook the flour out with the fat, and then you can just add it to things that you want. So let me turn that temperature up the back, get rid of this pancake. Let's do some things at once. It's been a while. Right, so what's coming up to temperature? That's burning. Very unprofessional doing two things at once, so it's slightly getting thicker. I've got a spoon, so put some of the new Beuure Manie in. Just drop it in as you go. And it will start to thicken up. I have every confidence in myself. I just think in this modern day of all kinds of chefs doing all kinds of weird and wonderful things on TV and in the restaurants, I just think we're losing some of the old techniques that certainly I was taught. See, I've knocked my pancake now. See, just not as good as they used to be. Nah, it'll be right. Sort that out in a bit. Turn the temperature up on the... oh, that's... turn the temperature up on the milk so it boils. There you go. Maybe it's better cool for the pancakes. Yeah, disaster. I'll throw that one away. Well, I'll eat it. This video is probably going to be a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but I really want to show you how Beuure Manie works. That's starting to thicken up. Whisk are always better for sauces, not if you've got aluminium pans, because what they tend to do if you've got aluminium pans, they scratch the aluminium, and aluminium is poisonous to the human body. Not in tiny doses, but in larger amounts, it's much more poisonous. Right, so as you can see, it's coming up to temperature. Maybe I should have boiled the milk a little bit more rapidly in the past and then added the Beuure Manie, but you can see that it's starting to thicken up. It needs a little bit more, but once it's at the right kind of thickness, then it is ready. There's no cooking out, no nothing needed. So keep stirring to make sure everything's mixed in. It needs a little bit more. You can just buy those granules that thicken white sauces and you just pour them in, but that costs money, and a little bit of fat and flour is cheap. So there we go. Right, turn that off. That is a white sauce made with a Beuure Manie, which is, you may think it's a little bit of faff, but once you've got it, it's dead easy to use. Yes, my Beuure Manie, I did notice that it is a little bit more yellow than normally I would have liked. That's not down to me cooking the flour for too long. That's down to the fat that I used. I forgot what it was from, but it was quite a yellow fat that I used. It's certainly beef fat, but I can't remember what it was from. But it's picked up a little bit of flavour as fat, and that's why it's a darker blonde colour. Yeah, so that's it. A white sauce made with a Beuure Manie.